And it's awfully awkward in Melbourne today to talk about water features and the value that they give your property. So anyway, this is my job. Nerea and I used to work together. We both worked at realestate.com.au. She was the good economist, I was the bad economist. And that gives me a license to talk about things that you can't possibly prove or disprove what's going to happen in the next 15, 20 years. Because that's my main area of research. And this is not going to happen. You're not going to be living on Mars in this time because, well, essentially, I think they've underestimated the problem, and the price of the real estate includes a very high commute cost. So, but 2035, let's think out that far. It's a really interesting time in Australia's future, and let's explore that a little bit. Now, this is me in my normal job. I've been around technology, and I've been a technologist for the last 2 or 3 decades. Been around it for a long time, since it was C3PO and digital watches that looked like that you could, buy a whole nation for. And more recently, I've been working in things like virtual reality, and that was one of my jobs at realestate.com.au, was to start to think about the impact of those things upon people. This is the thing I'm probably most famous for, and it proved to me an adage that when you're an inventor or a futurist, that the difference between being early with an invention and being wrong with an invention, same thing. Feels exactly the same. So being a little bit early with a virtual reality 3D property portal in 2016 seemed like it was an incredibly dumb idea. Then along came a pandemic in 2020 to prove that 3D tours might be a cool thing. So I've got a track record of getting it wrong. So that automatically probably half of you will walk away with. This is my most famous moment in media history, was being on a current affair, not being chased down the street, being asked what my impact on housing affordability was, but suggesting that telepathy would be a future interface for computers. And well, I'll still stand by that. It was an interesting moment in time. Now, how many days have we been in this mad state of what we social scientists call liminality? Liminality is the middle times. So we all remember the before times when life was simple and property was going up and it was all nice, and this is the pre-pandemic times. We're now living in this world where, I don't know, is it over? Or is it still changing? We want it to be over, because the worst place for a human being to be stuck is right in the middle of a change. And each of us has our own cast of mind. Some of us just want it to be over and get on. I don't care how bad it is, just let it settle to a new normal. I don't care if COVID's there. Just settle it, and then we can move on with our lives. Some of you want to go, just longingly want to go, oh God, can we go back to the good old days? The truth of our situation today is we are not the before or the after, we are the middle. And that's why you find the ambiguity and the uncertainty of these times, and why you probably come along to expos like this just for a clue as to what's going to happen next. Should I buy? Should I not? What's going to happen to insurance in flood zone areas? And the answer is, we don't know. There's a ton of us people out here trying to pretend we know, but we can give you some clues. So just acknowledging these are some wild times we live in, and the after isn't coming for a wee while yet. Because since that day, it's 944 days since they cancelled the Formula One Grand Prix at Albert Park. We've been living in liminality for 944 days so far. Optimistic species that we are. Now, here's this, let's just anchor ourselves. 2035, oh, it's too far away. It's like, it's the far-flung future. I'll be in my 70s. I don't want to even think about it. It's the same distance as the year 2010 is from us right now. And I'm hazarding that most of you in this room can remember what you were doing in 2010. Oh, it was just yesterday. For many people, 1990 is just yesterday, and that's the same distance to 2050. Oh my goodness, but look at the stuff we've got since 2010. We've got mobile devices that work on 4G and 5G, and you can do everything on them. You've got Uber, you've got payments technologies, you've got more social media. Wow, when you think about it, you remember back to what you had. You didn't even have an iPhone in 2010. And now one never leaves our hands, and I've got it on my watch. So just take that amount of change and let's accelerate forward to 2035 and imagine what's going to happen by then. And what does housing look like in 2035? Well, let's get it anchored. Here's the President of Australia in 2035, right? Certainly at the current rate of sort of social change and who we respect. Charlie's long gone and the kids, we don't want them. So I think we elect this bloke as the best Australian to be our president. And we don't have to talk about this one at all. In today's city, there's just thousands and thousands of Melbourne residents wondering, are they ever going to get car insurance again? Are they ever going to get home and contents insurance again? And when is the water going away? And we have to think about the role of government. We have to think about our own choices. Who is liable for this? How are we going to manage a world where this is the new normal? And it's suddenly upon all of us, and it feels unfair. But by 2035, I can tell you the sort of bullshit that's going down right now, flooding rivers right around the coastline of this country, will be a normal, everyday event. And you will build it into your expectations of the kind of home you want to live in. The shapes of our cities is going to be dramatically different by 2035. We're running on a model that was built in the 20th century, which is just add another suburb, add another suburb, add another suburb. And it's the simplest things of like infrastructure. Some remarkable social science research proves that humans over decades don't like to commute more than an hour. So you want to predict about where's a good place to gamble. If you should go to Gamblers Anonymous, become a property investor. You want to know where's good. Where is the future transport mode going to allow 1 hour or less commute to people's jobs? Just a bizarre human behaviour that is possibly hundreds of years old as to what we think is a realistic trade-off. Now, our city is going to shape just as they've changed shape in the last 3 years, and Lord knows how we're going to accommodate another 70,000 skilled workers coming in the next 6 to 12 months. But it isn't going to be necessarily vast estates on the edges of cities, which is tricky because pretty much everyone in this hall is selling one of those, aren't they? And the critical technology is Starlink. So Elon Musk's amazing, ridiculous, hideous lines of satellites running over the world, which he's just decided the Ukraine can't have, because he can't take a joke. And it's now shaping Australia's cities. $139 for a 100 to 300 megabit line, and you can live anywhere. So now, as we don't know, it's liminal times, whether you're coming back to work or not coming back to work or coming back to work for 1 day a week. You can go and live anywhere. So the housing crisis that is this ridiculous thing of 8 million people in Melbourne by 2040 may not happen. You may not have to live here. Now, here's the other factor. At one stage, Warren Buffett said the greatest force on the planet is compound interest. I can't remember. Lots of people have said that over time. The greatest force on our planet is the simple fact of aging. And Australia is one of the most rapidly aging countries in the world. Now, I feel this as a nearly 60-year-old. We each get 4,000 weeks, roughly, on this planet. I've used 3,000. I'm not here to mess around with the last 1,000. Aging is upon us. Let's have a look at the data. So Liz Allen, who's a demographer, an Australian demographer, she's done the numbers on what it looks like in the next couple of decades. This is with full immigration, which far too many Australians are politically opposed to. They shouldn't be, because if you want to have any standard of living in your 70s and 80s, then you'll be welcoming people to this country who might get a job and pay tax. Because what used to be a pyramid of population is turning very rapidly up the other way. We are living longer, and the drama of that is how are we financially going to afford those things? This will change the shapes of the houses we all want to live in. Trust me, when I'm 80, I don't want to live in a 300 square metre, 2-storey, giant pillared ranch house, nowhere near services. And you're going to have to start thinking about this stuff right now. Because by the time we get, according to Liz's research, by the time we get to like 2050, which again, remember, is only as far away from now as 1990 was, there's one single 5-year age cohort that has the loudest voice in Australia on public policy, on everything. And it might surprise you to know that it's going to be women aged 80 to 84. They will be the longest line on one of these graphs. Now, how do we change our thinking in a world where that's the political reality? It's so different to where we are today. Anyway, it's going to change the sort of houses we want, and the wealth transfer is the other thing that 2035 is incredibly important for. And the numbers are so big, I had to write them on my hand. So, $3 trillion will have transferred between my boomer generation and the Gen X's and Y's in this room by 2035. $3 trillion, because I'll have died and I'll have handed that on. We have accumulated unholy amounts of money in our property. Now, what's my 21-year-old going to do with that money, right? Well, he's got different values. He's a Melbourne Central dwelling Liberal Green Party hippie. He's probably not going to spend every single penny building a gigantic rental portfolio and be a slumlord. He's probably going to value the environment more. He's probably going to value social causes. He's probably going to value living somewhere that's sustainable. So I don't know what he's going to do with his money, but I seriously doubt he's going to buy rental properties. So in 1 year alone, from that point onwards, $230 billion a year will transfer from my generation to your generation and the generation after. And how is that going to impact a market? Are they all going to buy homes? I don't know. It's going to be a wild time to be in banking, that's for sure. Now, this is one of the things I want to do. People go, oh, he's talking about reverse mortgages and old people's homes and all those kind of things, and it's always crap, right? It's always horrible. Actually, it doesn't have to be. And when companies like Coroma start taking it seriously, they make the lifestyle adaptive property components like bathrooms that are beautiful and worth aspiring to live in. So don't imagine for a minute that being a boomer and getting old is going to be crap. Unless you've got no money, that'll be a little bit tough because there's no taxpayers. And the world of data, we're all a bit frightened. We all lost our data to the damned Optus thing, didn't we? The Optus, that's going to happen more and more, but managing your data with smart homes, your devices that are all connected, are going to make it incredibly easier for people to live at home and stay at home before they have to go into care. Because you'll have little robotic assistants that are tracking. This one here is a beautiful one, a company called MySense in the UK. 5 sensors in the home. Where would you put 5 sensors in the home if you wanted to track the health and well-being of an elderly relative? Well, you put it one in the bed, one on the lounge, one on the TV controller, one on the front door, and one on the toilet flush. And from that data alone over time, you can sense and then build some sort of care network around how people are doing on their own, because there's a lot of single elderly people out there at the time. The biggest component, the biggest horror story of aging in Australia is that there's health boards like, say, Flinders in Adelaide, which is currently the largest aged population in a suburban basis in the country. They're tracking one single health crisis to come. Is it Alzheimer's? Is it dementia? Is it cancer? It's loneliness. And this is the truth about property, is property builds communities. And that's why property is always going to happen at a neighbourhood level, and that's got to become a massive policy thing and a consideration for people. I know everyone here says, oh, we're building communities, all those kind of things. It's not bullshit, it's real. We're humans, we live in communities. And that is going to become amped up as a thing that people seek in the future. And whether that's an apartment block community like Singapore or Hong Kong or those kind of countries, or it is more of just a street level, I think it's going to be a really big deal about the shape of the world. Now, also by 2035, this is going to become a daily headline. There will be a class divide in Australia over property. There will be the haves and the have-nots. And this country is going to have to lean into this, and I know my children's generation think about this immensely. Investors, owners, and others are going to have to start thinking about this as well. I'm involved in a charity called Orange Sky Laundry. Ostensibly started out washing homeless people's clothes in Australia. There's 120,000 people who are not very sure about where they'll be sleeping tonight, which is a technical definition of homeless. It's not rough sleeping. There's maybe a few thousand rough sleepers tonight across Australia. But not knowing where you will sleep tonight is a horrible feeling and a really difficult one. This is only going to get worse, and the tragedy, because of the economic structures of this country, is it's going to impact one demographic really badly, and it's already started. The people we're seeing turn up at Orange Sky Laundry are single women over 50 sleeping in their cars. And we've got to deal with this. We are not an economy. We are a society who needs to think about whether this is our own family or our neighbours or whoever we care for. These are the dimensions to think about in terms of property and community in the future. So the numbers are just terrible. A tsunami of homeless women is a terrible headline. The number of women over 50 couch surfing or sleeping in their cars has doubled in the last 4 years. That was to 2017. I'm going to hazard a guess it's doubled again. This is the real crux of Australia's housing problem. Not can we build more suburbs and release more land and make sheep farmers into billionaires, is how do we care for a community? And the haves and the have-nots. This is a tragic photograph. It's not Australia, I'm pleased to say, but buy a home with no down payment. Fantastic finance for the able and the homeless people living beneath it. I've lived in the United States. I've lived in San Francisco and Los Angeles. We do not want to create a society like that in this country. That's the homeless crisis. I'm amazed today that there aren't any robots in the room. A lot of the talks I go along to high-tech talks, those kind of things. There's always some kind of artificial intelligence, and it's very much here in the world of finance today. If you're going to get rated for a bank loan, well, it's been rated by an algorithm for 20 years, scoring your expenses, your age, terrible things like, how much have you got on Afterpay, young man? It's like, that's going to count against you now. So we've had robot bankers for a long time. In this world, we're going to have that massively. And by 2035, most unlikely to be too many humans involved in deciding if you can become a borrower. It started a long time ago, and I know if I look on the internet, spend far too much time on the internet, if I look around, when the major institutions of this world start involving themselves in stuff, you go, you know what, they're not very good gamblers. They go for the sure bets. So when Fidelity built a mortgage centre in Decentraland, which is one of the bizarre, crazy-ass metaverses, you go, what'd they do that for? Are people going to spend a lot more time in that world? And also, with respect to the builders that are in this place today and have supported this amazing expo, the world is going to change by 2035 on who makes your houses. What Jamie and his colleague were talking about environmental sustainability is going to become mainstream. Now, how's that going to play out? Well, in New Zealand, it's playing out right now that we're buying Japanese prefabricated homes from a Panasonic. Like, oh no, they make my DVD player. No. Panasonic and Toyota make homes. They have factories the size of Melbourne CBD building 6-star environmental, and we're not talking tiny houses, we're talking proper homes. So the competition for these folk here in the next 15 years is not each other, it's outside Australia. So they're in New Zealand right now, and it's really upsetting to the traditional builders, right? They're going, hey, wait a minute, that should be illegal. No, if we want to solve housing crises and availability we were talking about before, we have to build more houses. It's the simplest of algorithms. We solved street homelessness during the pandemic by just housing people. And the biggest dilemma for Australia right now, let's just share a secret here, right? Is that the 4 tent poles of the housing economy, banking, government, the people who want to spruik and celebrate the continuous rise in the value of property, isn't it fantastic? Are a mighty force for us to talk about housing affordability against. So, local government, around 20% of their income comes from property taxes and rates. Do they want house prices to go up? Hell yeah. Banks lending $1 million are earning an awful lot more money as an average loan than they will, and that was $200,000. So they're going to be spruiking that to the world. Whether that's my old employer, the real estate sites, cheerleaders, for price inflation on property. So there's going to be some forces at play when these kind of players come in and you can get a house for 150 grand that are going to be a really interesting landscape for the next 15 years. So there's Panasonic, there's Toyota. These are not crap houses. These are beautiful, like all the standards that were being talked upon the stage by Jamie. All built in, been doing it for years, earthquake proof. So this is going to put incredible pressure on Australia's builders to do a better job, which I think is awesome. I think that is the power of competition and capitalism, is to get a better job and better value for everybody. Now these people are interesting, not the least of which they're in a massive legal case, but Nido in the United States, they've got an incredible database of who wants to live and stay where. How did they get that? Well, because Airbnb are a business partner in this. They're building 14 new buildings, which they've fallen out over, so it's on a bit of a stall at the moment. Based on the data, if you've ever stayed in an Airbnb, they have your data and it's demand data.
Land Inspection.
We'll just let that one go for a minute. There you go. So wow, imagine being a building and construction company and having access to the millions and millions of people and where they want to go, and are they university students or are they travellers? This building here, I think it's at Nashville.
The session in the seminar room is from Landmark Inspection.
There you go, might be quite good. So this is 1/3 owner-occupied, 1/3 short-term rentals Airbnb, and 1/3 a hotel, because that's what the demographic data told them, and that's a really big competitive future for our property world. And of course, Amazon. Amazon has been selling kitset homes for some time. $105,000 for a 3-bedroom designed in Finland, built in Estonia, 240-foot container home. 105 grand. Find me one for under $500,000 around Melbourne right now. So this global competition will be rampant by 2035 and makes for a really spicy world that we're in. Jeff Bezos has got his eyes on the Australian property industry like with laser-like vision, because they're really good at logistics, right? They're really good at supply chain. All the things that are killing people trying to build a house right now, running out of nails. Well, trust me, when Panasonic and Toyota and when Amazon get their hold on it, and imagine even in the rental world, right? Maybe they're not building and selling those Estonian houses. Maybe they're the landlord. Is my 21-year-old happy to pay his rent to Amazon Prime? They just add it on. He's going to love that. Because he might even get some customer service from the property manager when he calls to get the toilet fixed. And they built a generation of digitally literate kids who can absolutely manage that. Now, I had to talk about this because people go, what about the metaverse? Is that a thing? When you have, in a country like Australia, a cult of property ownership, based on 150 years of what we ran away from in Europe and not wanting to be trodden on by the upper class people, and land being freedom, and all the things that go into our rich omelette of property politics. And then you have an availability of a world that anyone aged 10 to 30 right now is pretty competent in, called gaming and the online world, and you have a really interesting recipe for what property becomes. Because you might have and only be able to afford a very small little house, but you put a headset on and that house might transform into something completely different. And it's very difficult for people over 50 to imagine this, because they're, oh no, it's games and it's terrible, get outside, get some fresh air. But I'm talking about a group of people natively comfortable with a digital realm. So you probably heard the story of the 3 guys who paid $1.4 million between them to buy the 3 properties next door to Snoop Dogg in a metaverse, right? Because what are they doing? They're applying exactly the same logic they watched their parents and their grandparents' generation have. Oh yeah, real estate, that's a good asset class. And they're gamblers and they're gamers and they love the lifestyle and the Snoop Dogg vibe. Hell yeah, this is real. People will possibly, although the NFT market proved it's not always universally possible, earn more money off this than buying an investment property in the CBD of Melbourne. So if you're an investor and you're not considering this as an asset class, maybe you kind of want to think about 2035. We've had the metaverse forever. Since 2003, those of us who are older remember Second Life. I mean, that's forever old, all the way up to Decentraland. You know, now, and then people go, but nobody's in Decentraland. And that's true. They reckon there's about 100 people a day turn up in that metaverse. But they've bought NFTs there, they've bought land there, they've done all those things. But this is real, and if you are a property gambler, you want to be considering about those as an asset. Because we've trained a generation of kids to collaborate, to strategize, to build, and to think about stuff in virtual worlds. Pretty much everyone here would know someone who's been building something in Minecraft. My honest advice to you, Minecraft, Fortnite, lost my children, lost my grandchildren, lost my nephews and nieces to those stupid games. Go and sit next to them to understand what will be a major force in our economy by 2035. And I see it in the crossovers. So I see it, you know, when the Catholic Church buys into a metaverse, something's going on, because they're not gamblers, right? Spotify in Roblox. It's the combinations where things butt up against each other at the cutting edge of innovation where interesting stuff happens. So I'm hopefully still here to see you all in 2035. I do love the fact that artificial intelligence has aged our president appropriately for that time. And I hope to see you all back here in 2035, and you can tell me I was completely wrong, or you've got property in Roblox. Thank you very much. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, no worries.
We can do questions, though.
Yeah, if that's okay.
I think we've got time for Q&A.
Has anyone got any questions for Nigel? Really interesting, really detailed conversation there.
Not as exciting as a land release, which is coming up next.
It's coming up.
I'm sure that everyone's hanging out for that. Maybe.
Yes, we've got still a few more minutes before that one's going to begin, though. That's why I'm curious. Has anyone got any questions about this crazy future that we're heading into? VR world. Who would have thought about that?
Thanks, Nigel. It's quite exciting in the future. Since you talk about NFT, how about you thinking about the future of cryptocurrency?
Yeah, look, I work in a world where we do software development around the blockchain. So the dilemma with this whole futuristic world of non-fungible tokens and cryptocurrency and the blockchain and all this stuff is that it is like an omelette, and all the ingredients are mixed up in there, and some of them stink like shit, to be honest. And the NFTs are the really stinky little bits right now because they have been gambling. The motivation for them has been pretty poor. Whereas you look at the use of other components of that, so non-bank payments, for example, sharing payments, equitable distribution of data. So I think my favourite thing I've seen in the last week around in property is the banking, so fintech related, but the Australian Stock Exchange thinking about using blockchain for their chess system. That's a brilliant use of that technology. But yeah, as always, it gets caught up in our innate love of gambling and making money that we shouldn't be making. And yeah, NFTs, wow, that was hard to watch people spend tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, cryptocurrency's the same. The fact to remember about crypto is that there's a handful of people, maybe 12 people own 80% of the world's cryptocurrency. 10 people. And why have we got that? Well, it's quite simple, as they just pump those coins. Now they're owning 80% of it, so when they just pump that up to a certain value, when they dump 10% of their 80% and it crashes the currency and they walk away, they don't care about the 10% who lost everything, because they only lost 7/8 of their holdings and they made so much money. It's a completely kind of unfair distribution of information around those kind of things, and that's not new. I mean, we're talking about Ponzi schemes, we're talking about crazy ways of making money, pyramid schemes, games. When I was a kid, there was crypto madness sort of equivalent. It was just like this. It was called the airplane game, where I'd entice you all along to a seminar like this, and you all put $100 in, and every week you put your $100 in, and I'm the pilot, right? I'm at the head of the plane here. I'm piloting, and I get all your money, and I walk away with $2.5 grand because I was the pilot, and I'm going, this is the best thing ever. You should all get onto the airplane game, and then you come up and be the pilot, and you get it, and you love it, and it only falls apart when that seat at the back can't be filled because everyone's going, I'm not playing that game. That's cryptocurrency, not new.
Yeah, come on. Cool. Fantastic. Does that answer your question?
Don't gamble on crypto.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I've been skeptical the whole time. It's
kind of really interesting where the demographic of crypto has been, because it's been those tradie bogan, like cashed up.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm mad. All my mates said, get me into crypto.
I know, and I think it's really funny as well because there's like that giant piece of hardware that they have in their home office that's mining for it.
Yeah, the carbon impact of this is like it's the equivalent of a whole city, the average coin.
Totally, like it's so, I don't know if you've been near one, but it's so loud and it's so like hot in the room around it. It's insane.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Absolutely. Are there any more questions? I think this is a really fascinating conversation.
They're all.
Yeah.
I think they're all waiting for the land release.
Fantastic presentation, and when we think about some of the numbers that the presenter before you shared in terms of population, can you tell me what you see the future of housing being in terms of the types of dwellings when we think about 2035?
Yep.
You've already made comment that it's not the big McMansion in the burbs, so could you speak a bit more to that, please?
Yeah, I think it's well worth looking. Go and have a look at Toyota and Panasonic's sites and see the modularity of the homes and the different sizes. You can live in a 120 square metre home quite adequately if it's well designed. And I meant beautifully designed. So the drama is that our expectations are, we need another bedroom, we need a double garage, we need all these things. And the missing piece is design, which I think Jamie was kind of getting to, right? The 50s and the 60s taught us, the mid-century, design is possible to be both sustainable and humanly interesting to live in. And not casting aspersions on all my friends here, but they're riding a wave of mad greed and ambition in Australia about, well, I need 40 squares, and I'm going to use every last inch of my piece of land, and never let my concrete slab return its carbon debt because there's no grass. And I think the world, if we go to whether it's Scandinavia or Asia or otherwise, proves that it's perfectly possible to live comfortably in a small house. And I think that will be the mega trend for 2035. We'll be back to smaller places. And you know why? It's very simple. My dad's 87, got ill, put him in a home, and there is nothing focuses the mind on your own acquisition of too much materialistic crap in your life than cleaning your dad's house out and putting it in a skip. And by 2035, millions of me will have done that, and I'll have inherited the cash as a result, and they're going to change their values. And whether it's the intersection of the COVID crisis, which is with us for years to come, health crises and more pandemics are the new pattern because we travel so much and we're so difficult to politically align. That combined with in-your-face waste, I think is going to change considerably. So the question becomes, what happens to the McMansions? Like, what are we going to do? The good news is, they're all going to fall down. That Jamie and his mate, like they're onto something. The lifespan, you go to some of these suburbs, the mould, the collapse, the quality of the work, they're not going to be 100-year houses, they're 30-year houses, and they were built 2000 to now. So that'll kind of solve it, and then it comes down to, well, those are going to be pretty cool places to live. Maybe they'll divide them up, make them a little less dense, but the houses replacing them won't be bigger, they'll be smaller, they'll be around courtyards. I just love to see how the world solved so many of these problems with homelessness over the pandemic. And I know there's people in Australia desperate to try and get the banks and the portals and the government together I mean, just literally the land under the freeways of Melbourne alone could be turned into some pretty cool intensive housing. Maybe they need some noise reduction because of the freeways. And we could solve thousands of people who are stressed for their properties right now. And it's not going to get any better. So there's no miracle coming for your superannuation. There's no miracle coming for your savings. In the next 15 years, like, the only miracle is inheritance from the boomers. And you may or may not have access to that.
Great stuff. I think there's a bit of information there. Just respect your elders. There we go.
Yeah.
I do have another question for you. We've got our land release person who's coming, but if you've got time just for one more, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks so much. Just one quick question. Where are you living in 2035 and why?
And I've thought about it long and hard. I'm living in New Zealand. That house build is underway now. It's a little slow. You can tell from my New Zealand accent. I'm a Kiwi. And I need to get away from the suburb I'm in Melbourne, because by 2035 the sea level rise is going to start making that a hazard for insurance. And I've chosen very carefully the site where I'm living in New Zealand. Seawater rise. So in this, to be fair, I've had a good career, right? So I had a little bit of money left over at the end. It's all good. And I rode the rise. I stole all your money. I boomed my way to property wealth in Melbourne. So I had a bit of choice. So I'm 36 metres above sea level, which is 8 metres higher than the worst tsunami predicted. I'm 1.5 kilometres from the coast, because it's lovely to see the ocean. I don't want it in my front door, but it's lovely to see the ocean. Everything within 800 metres of the coast where I'm moving to currently cannot get home and contents insurance. Now, there's a lot of holiday homes and second homes and those kind of things in that area. But wow, might encourage people to have less stuff. But you're talking, to replace those homes, they're self-insuring for $500,000 amounts of money. Those are the big risks. So I've kind of chosen on a sort of semi-off-the-grid, sustainable, rural, I'll die with a Pinot Noir in my hand looking out over the ocean. I won the lottery.
Beautiful. That's really good news. Just wanted to ask now, have you got any rooms to rent?
It's actually a really interesting question, because if we look back through history, we've got a housing crisis right now. And I think the number you might have been looking for, the number I've read about, how many houses would Australia have to build right now to get on top of rental stress, as Nerida talked about, and buying stress? It's about 80,000, instantaneous. That's a lot of building.
That is
a lot of building.
That is so much building. So
the answer of what's happened in previous, when economic times changed, we were in liminal times and times were tough, is people rented bedrooms. If you go back to your grandparents, go back to my grandparents, I'm a gentleman of a certain age, fascinated by Ancestry.com. You go back and of course you see the censuses for those days. It's good. How many freaking people were living in my grandparents' house? I visited it. It has 3 bedrooms. There's 11 people there. And they don't all have my family's last name, because in the 1930s, that's what we did. We clubbed together as communities and we lowered our standards as to what we thought privacy was, and we reached out into the community. And that, 100 years later, will come back if we don't solve this crisis. Aged flatmates is going to be a massive thing. Okay, I'm definitely done. We've got a big announcement coming. There's land to give away. Oh, we're selling it, we're not giving it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you.